They call it a celebration. Another parade of frail new species, standing tall on weak legs and preaching peace from the podium of the Galactic Republic. Another ceremonial induction, grand, pompous, hollow. They act as if this moment is sacred, historic, as if it's something more than the bureaucratic drivel it truly is. I hate these meetings. What use is there in pageantry when the subject is always the same? Another race from another cradle world where nature is tame and time is kind. Another species that never had to fight for breath. The galaxy is littered with them, soft creatures born from soft soil, singing soft songs about peace and progress. To evolve on such a world is no triumph. It's inevitability dressed in costume. Celebrating their emergence is like applauding a star for rising in the morning. Predictable, meaningless. And yet, every time, this council insists on a spectacle. These species, these so-called civilizations, step onto the stage with trembling pride, pale and paper-thin, to speak of their unique journeys. 1,000 times the same. Their world was gentle, their evolution unchallenged, their rise to intelligence unearned. They tamed crops, built cities, flew to the stars, never once truly tested. They call minor skirmishes wars. They shudder at the idea of a hurricane, let alone an earthquake. They faint at the word famine. They evolve beneath golden skies and tranquil seas. And yet, they claim wisdom. My people, the VAR, we evolved beneath storm and stone, in fire and famine. Our world does not offer life. It dares you to take it. When we reached the stars, we expected to find peers, equals, rivals forged in flame. Instead, we found pacifists in silk gloves, and so we did what came naturally. We carved out our place. We used their fear. We wielded our scars like weapons and made the galaxy listen. For a time it worked. They flinched. They yielded. But empires forged by fear must walk carefully. The Republic does not tolerate dominance, only diplomacy. And so here I am, VAR Axion, fourth son of Emperor VAR, representative of my people, reduced to ceremony. My father insists on sending a delegate, if only for appearances. He believes, perhaps rightly, that absence would stoke rumors, that the VAR Empire is preparing for war, as if we ever stopped. So, I sit, again, in the obsidian chair crafted too delicately for my weight, in a chamber built for voices that fear to echo. I sit among silk-skinned pacifists who wince at raised voices and think conflict is obsolete. Delegate Dry of the Jayeth Combine is seated beside me, one of the few species whose blood runs even a little warm. Her people once knew war briefly. That alone earns her a sliver of respect. She leans in. Delegate VAR, she says, voice a soft chirp. You may want to pay attention to this one. I grunt. Is it over 1,000 now? Or has this one figured out fire before flinching at rain? Her grin is irritating. Aven species always smile like they're hiding a secret. And Dry is never not hiding something. Just watch. I promise, Axion. This time you'll actually like them. I scoff but shift in my seat nonetheless. It's either this or risk my father's disappointment, and his fury is far worse than boredom. The lights dim, the chamber hushes, the ceremony begins. Delegate Dry steps forward, voice amplified by the central projection sphere. Honored delegates of the Republic Council, thank you for attending this most illustrious occasion. Today, we welcome a new voice into our chorus, a new species, newly found by our combine in the outer reaches. They come from a world far beyond the well-mapped arms of our galaxy, further than any race yet integrated. Please welcome Delegate Smith of Humanity United. The sphere shifts. A spotlight drops. And there, stepping forward, framed by light and gravity, walks a human. Thin-skinned, yes, pale, predictable, but not quite so fragile as most. There's muscle on this one, real muscle. Not the bloated sort born of low gravity. The structure is dense, balanced, and something else. The stance, unstable, no, overstable. Ah, their gravity must match ours, perhaps even exceed it. That is rare. Now I'm curious. The human takes his place at the center, a simple creature, fur on his head and jaw, but not excessive. Square teeth with a few pointed ones. Omnivore. No claws, no armor. Yet he holds himself with poise. Confidence. He speaks. Thank you, Delegate Dry. Council members, esteemed guests, I am Delegate Smith, John Smith, for full clarity. I stand here today not merely to represent my species, but to introduce you to our world, our struggles, and our place among you. The voice is deep, clear, not projected for dominance, but precise, calibrated. I tilt my head. John Smith continues. We call ourselves humans, our species, humanity, our homeworld, Earth, though I must confess that translates rather humbly. It simply means dirt. A ripple of amusement through the chamber. I do not laugh, but I listen. Let me tell you of Earth, a planet of oceans, mountains, deserts, and fire. Nearly 70% of our world is water, of which only 3% is safe to drink. The rest, poisoned by salt and later by ourselves. We have evolved not despite hardship, but because of it. Images flood the chamber's projection sphere. Landscapes, burning deserts, frozen wastes, storm-racked jungles, every biome deadly, every path treacherous. I lean forward. They lived through that? I glance at Dry. She only grins. Of course she knew. Delegate Smith paces slowly, deliberately. Before we built cities, we wandered. Before we farmed, we hunted. Our ancestors chased beasts across plains not because we were stronger or faster, but because we endured. We ran, for hours, days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. The room goes still. I know this strategy. It is not predation. It is warfare. And suddenly, I do something no VAR has done during one of these ceremonies in centuries. I stand, not in anger, not in threat, in respect. Delegate Smith has my full attention. There is silence in the chamber, not because of what the human said, but because I stood. Among the Republic, the customs of the VAR are known, if not well understood. When a VAR rises from a seated position during an official ceremony, it means one thing: undivided attention. For my people, respect is earned, not declared. Delegate Smith has earned mine. Of course, the others misunderstand. I see them leaning back, whispering, wide-eyed. They think I'm preparing to attack. They know our war forms, but they do not recognize the subtle curve of my back, the softened posture of acknowledgement. No matter. Let them guess. Let them watch. Smith continues, unbothered. Our world, Earth, is not only treacherous in climate or terrain. The greatest threat on our planet is ourselves. He raises a hand, and the projection sphere shifts again, this time not to landscapes or weather, but to the image of a human body. It is wounded, scarred. Then another image appears. Two humans facing each other. One has a weapon, the other is unarmed. Then another, smoke, fire, cities crumbling, explosions, uniforms, armies, war. Gasps ripple through the council. Before we ever left our atmosphere, Smith says, his voice flat, humanity had already claimed over 1.5 billion lives through conflict. That's not a metaphor or poetic flourish. That is the death toll of our wars. Entire generations lost. Nations burned. Skies choked with ash. Around me, delegates squirm. I feel their revulsion. They are not used to this. They come from peaceful, ordered worlds where survival is a puzzle of science, not a crucible of blood. I do not flinch. Instead, I feel something unfamiliar stir within me. Pride, number not for them. Recognition. Smith does not gloat. He does not apologize. He does not beg forgiveness. He simply tells the truth. But violence was not all we knew. Our endurance extended beyond the hunt, beyond battle. When the wars quieted, we built. And when the cities rose again, we learned. The projection shifts. Now there is music, images of humans dancing, playing instruments, great towers of glass, vast networks of machines and cables, lights blinking in rhythm across dark skies, paintings, books, theaters, digital worlds imagined within screens. We love, we create, we dream, and we remember. There's a flicker of something behind his voice, a weight, carefully hidden. This one is not merely a diplomat. He's a soldier. I know the tone. He speaks not from briefing documents, but from memory. And suddenly I understand why Dry told me to pay attention. This presentation is not simply information. It is a warning and an invitation. You see, Smith says, stepping back from the projector, humans are contradictions. We are thinkers and killers, artists and monsters, dreamers and destroyers. We build museums in cities where we once dropped bombs. We write lullabies in the languages of our former enemies. We wage war for peace, and peace sometimes for pride. He raises his eyes, locking them with mine. We are not perfect, but we are real. The chamber remains still. No applause, no comment, just silence, and not the awkward kind. It is reverence, or perhaps fear. Then, slowly, I speak. My voice rumbles across the chamber like distant thunder. You endure your prey. You endure each other. Do you endure yourselves? Smith hesitates, then nods once. Not always, but we try. A simple answer. Honest. Too honest for most here, but not for me. The ceremony ends shortly after. Formalities are spoken, files exchanged. I barely hear them. My thoughts are still back there, in that chamber, in that speech. Not since my great-grandfather addressed the council 5 generations ago has anyone spoken so plainly of blood and survival. Not since him have I seen the room listen. The delegates begin to scatter. Some retreat, others gather in whispers. Smith walks off alone, posture tight, tension hidden beneath that strange human poise. He believes he's done well, but fears he's done too well. I understand. He thinks he might have scared them. He's not wrong. But for the first time in a long while, I am not bored. For the first time, I see potential. And as I rise to follow him into the reception chamber, I make a decision that will alter the future of 2 species. The reception hall is quieter than usual. Typically, these events are little more than diplomatic grazing sessions, a parade of exotic foods and forced smiles, of polished pleasantries and fake laughter. But today, there's a tension in the air. Not hostile, just uncertain. Delegates murmur in corners, eyes flicking toward the man at the far end of the room. They pretend not to stare. They fail. Delegate Smith, humanity's ambassador, their warning, their invitation. He stands near the refreshments table, poking uncertainly at a tray of glistening blue cubes. They jiggle. He frowns. Please don't taste like what you look like, he mutters to himself. I approach slowly. Despite the lesser gravity, each step feels heavy, intentional. My claws tap faintly on the stone-inlaid floor. The conversation in the room hushes further. Some delegates shift, already assuming the worst. Let them. Smith turns, casual if slightly stiff. His posture is wary, but not submissive. Good. I hate grovelers. I stop a full body's length away. We stare. Then I speak. Hello, Delegate Smith. I am VAR Axion, 4th son of Emperor VAR of the VAR Empire. I would like to discuss with you terms for a human VAR cultural exchange. A beat, then another. Smith blinks. What? He's stunned, of course. His species has barely joined the council. Most new members spend decades untangling basic trade agreements before a single diplomat even speaks to them beyond formalities. And now, one of the most feared races in the galaxy offers him, an exchange. He stammers. Sure. Yeah, I mean, of course, I'll forward that to the higher reps. We've got a whole division for that sort of diplomatic thing. I'm just a retired soldier in a fancy suit. I extend my hand. A silence deeper than gravity settles over the room. To most species, it's a handshake. To the VAR, an extended hand is challenge. But mine is not held high, nor turned claw out. The gesture is deliberately neutral. A test. Smith hesitates, but not long. He reaches out, grips my hand firm and steady. I tighten just slightly. He doesn't flinch. I like you, I rumble, then release. You did your research. You spoke of your violence without apology. You did not pretend to be something you are not. He chuckles, though I sense nerves beneath it. Well, thanks. I was worried we came off a bit too intense. You were perfect, I reply. For once, a new species introduced itself with fire. We leave the reception behind, retreating to one of the quieter ambassadorial lounges. Smaller chambers with adjustable atmospheres and reinforced floors, built for species like me. A refreshment console waits. I tap in a few codes, disabling the safety filters. I've brought my own bottle, a VAR distillate, aged in lava-soaked stone, a drink meant for warriors. It smolders in the glass like liquid magma. I slide one to Smith. Cultural exchange, I say. He eyes the drink like it might explode. You sure this won't melt my organs? Only the weak ones. He snorts, takes a sip, and immediately coughs so hard he nearly launches the glass. Holy hell! That's whiskey? That's not whiskey, that's a war crime in a bottle. I laugh, loud, deep. Then your species has weak whiskey. He nods, wiping a tear from his eye. Yours could strip paint. We drink. The tension fades, like steam from hot stone. Stories begin, simple ones at first. War stories, barracks jokes, dumb mistakes. Then deeper things, loss, duty, the quiet fear of becoming what your people expect of you. Smith tells me of his military past, how he never wanted to be a delegate, how he only said yes because no one else volunteered, how his government didn't want to risk someone important. I understand. I tell him of my brothers, 3 older, all vying for my father's throne, how I chose diplomacy not out of cowardice, but survival. There is no throne for the 4th son, only teeth. He listens, eyes steady, no judgment. You ever wish you could just... Not? Not what? Be who you're supposed to be. I think about it, then shake my head. I tried once. The galaxy reminded me that survival requires purpose. You can reject your role, but the void will assign you a worse one. He nods slowly. Sounds like my therapist. What is a therapist? A paid listener. We call those elders. We both laugh. Eventually, the bottle is empty. The room is warm. Smith leans back, still upright in that slightly too balanced way. I watch him carefully. Behind the casual demeanor, the human mind churns. He is not fearless, but he is courageous. That is better. Axion, he says softly. You really meant it? The cultural exchange? Yes. Why? I consider the question, not the political answer, the true one. Because I am tired of looking across this council and seeing only weakness in our so-called allies. And you don't think we're weak? You are violent, brutal, capable of great destruction. I pause. But you are ashamed of it. That makes you dangerous, not because you are killers, but because you are killers pretending to be something else. And that makes us allies. It makes you like us, and no one else is. There is a long silence. Then he offers his glass for a refill that isn't coming. Well then, Smith says, guess we better figure out how not to kill each other. Or better yet, I say, smiling with teeth, how to fight together. The council chamber was never meant to hold the weight of change. Its ceilings stretch high above to suggest wisdom, to imply that its decisions are grand, eternal, untouchable. But no ceiling is high enough to contain revolution, not when it begins not with weapons, but with words. 2 weeks have passed since Earth's induction. 2 weeks since VAR Axion stood for a human. 2 weeks since whispers turned into arguments. And now, chaos dressed in civility. The chamber buzzes with restrained panic. Delegate after delegate stands to speak, some with panic, others with polished outrage. Their words orbit the same core: humanity, humanity's wars, their capacity for violence, their unapologetic history, and above all, their alliance with the VAR. It sets a dangerous precedent, says one. We cannot reward warmongers with legitimacy, says another. They glorified slaughter. They stood for it. They mean me. They mean Smith. They mean everything they fear in themselves, cast onto others. I remain seated this time, watching. My silence roars louder than my voice. It makes them nervous. Smith sits across the chamber, still, composed. He hasn't spoken once since his induction speech. Smart. Let them run out of breath before they remember to ask questions. The Grand Chair, an ancient being of crystal intellect and bureaucratic patience, finally rises, signaling order. Its voice is clear but emotionless, like water through stone. Delegate Smith of Humanity, Delegate Axion of VAR. The Council requires formal comment regarding the implications of your proposed cultural exchange. Smith rises slowly. He doesn't hurry. He doesn't stumble. He looks around the room, not in defiance, but in acknowledgement. Every eye is on him, every world, every future. He speaks. When we came here, we didn't expect to be liked. We knew our record. We knew how we'd be seen. And frankly, we understand the fear. There's a pause, a breath. But let me ask you this. If you believe peace is only possible with the absence of violence, then what do you do when the stars bring you something that fights to survive? You can push us away. You can label us monsters. You can isolate us like a virus you hope never spreads. Or, he turns, looking to me. I stand beside him. Not because I must, because I choose to. You can teach us. And maybe, just maybe, you can learn something too. Silence. Then the Grand Chair leans forward. You stand united. Humanity and VAR. You propose exchange, not merely of culture, but of understanding. We do, Smith says. We do, I echo. Then so be it. The Council approves. The motion passes. No applause, no cheers, only quiet acceptance. But it is enough. History does not begin with a roar. It begins with an exhale. Later, after the chamber empties, Smith and I walk side by side through the vast corridors of the station. The artificial lights cast soft shadows. We are quiet. There is nothing left to say. Until Smith speaks, his voice low. I think we just lit a fire. I glance sideways. Let's hope it spreads. You ever think we're the villains in someone else's story? Always, I reply. But if they fear us for who we are, let them write us in blood and ash. We'll write our own ending. With fire, with purpose. Epilogue. The first human VAR exchange program launches 6 months later. Smith leads the diplomatic corps. I return home, for now. But already the younger delegates speak of humans not with fear, but with fascination. And somewhere, on a once quiet planet called Earth, a child reads about the stars. They ask their mother, "What's out there?" And she smiles. Something fierce. Something kind. Something just like us.